So I saw this really interesting article today. Um, it was talking about how guys like Jeff Bezos, the guy from Amazon, and Elon Musk, and many of these kind of guys who think at high levels for business, that while they are concerned with the things that are going to change, they're also concerned with the things that'll never change, the things that are going to be constant forever. And so they were talking about the idea that while it's important to consider what needs to be innovated, it's also important to remember those things that if we don't do consistently, um, that that will also be a problem. The things that never change. And it reminded me a lot of what my pastor John Garner used to say about um, how when we're talking about the faith, there are things that are timeless, and then there are things that are bound to a particular time and place. They are indeed cultural, and how important it is to distinguish between the two. For instance, the fact that we are supposed to disciple people, that's a timeless truth. The church of Jesus Christ, the ecclesia, the people of God, we grow, we accomplish his mission primarily by pouring our lives into the lives of others, relationship from one to the next, entrusting to the next person that which was entrusted to us. And that is how the faith is built. But the manner in which those relationships are built, and the way in which we do that practice of discipleship, that can change. And it should change depending on the culture, the age of the person who we're dealing with, or what their capabilities are in terms of what they can understand and grasp, and what place in their journey that they're at. Like, these are just things that we normally think about in other areas, but they are absolutely applicable in ministry as well. Discipleship, worship, I can remember when people used to fight over the kinds of music that would be played in a worship service. That doesn't seem to happen as often anymore, or at least it's not as discussed. But that's another example. Worship is to be focused on God, but how the congregation comes together and focuses on God, there's some flexibility there. I remember once, many years ago, I was reading this article, and I can't remember who it was by now for the life of me, but it was about the outgrowth of indigenous worship in Africa, and how for the longest time missionaries in Africa would only allow Africans to worship according to the European setup, the European structure. But um, as as they changed that approach, and they began to allow for music that came out of the African people themselves, worship became much more powerful and even evangelistic. It took on an aspect of helping the process of multiplication as the churches grew. Um, the community of faith grew because individuals in the community of faith were pouring in. Stewardship, the way we use God's resources, stewardship never changes. We're supposed to be stewards, but the needs of the community change, and so likewise the way in which we allocate resources should change. The As times change, as new things are invented and innovated, there are new ways in which needs can be met. We should seize on that. We should be aware of that, and we should consider that. With each generation, the things which people are willing to hear and to accept shift. It's not, the truth doesn't change, but the way in which we build the relationships and the point of connection, we build that bridge so that we can communicate the gospel, all of that changes and it shifts. And I suspect that what happens most of the time is that we become entrenched in the things that we love, that are valuable to us personally, but not necessarily the things which are timeless. They're the things that are a part of the time in which we grew up, or the time in which we came to the faith, the time in which we found Christ. And so we make those things timeless, but they're not. And we cling to the things that should be able to be changed. And by doing so, we minimize the things which can never be changed. Because when you hold to something past its usefulness, you are actually discarding what is important. For instance, Jesus says in the Gospels that when God's doing a new work, it's like new wine, but he pours new wine into new wineskins, because the new wineskins are for new wine, old wineskins are for old wine. Old wine is new wine ferments, and as it ferments, it expands. So the new wineskin is flexible and it can expand as the new wine ferments and expands. But an old wineskin has already expanded and hardened, and it is the shape it's going to be. So if you put new wine in an old wineskin, what's going to happen is the new wine's going to expand and the old wineskin is going to burst. It's going to pull apart because it can't handle the stress of the new thing that is happening within it. And too often what happens is, I think we become so enamored with the old wineskin, with the thing that's important to us, that we would rather have no wine than let go of the old wineskin. We would rather have no ministry than do ministry differently. We would rather have no worship than worship differently. We would rather have no discipleship than do discipleship differently. I suspect that's a problem for far more congregations and far more individuals than many of us realize. So, anyway, something for each of us to consider, right? What are the things that are absolutely important? And what are the things that we can let go of, that we should let go of? That by not letting go, we're actually keeping God from being able to do something in our lives. Anyway, that's what I've been thinking about. So, I'll catch you later.